I was 7 years old and already carried memories I should never have known. By 9, I was ready to start over. A new house, a new school, and maybe a new version of me. One that could forget the shadows and just be a kid again. When the school year returned, I was 7 years old, moving into 2nd grade, carrying memories I should never have known. Those difficult moments went on and on. I struggled in silence, too afraid to speak, too little to fight. At night, I prayed quietly, whispering words I hoped God could hear. Please make it stop. Please don't let it happen again. But it didn't stop. It happened more often than I could ever admit. I was 6 years old when I lost my chance in life to just be a kid. I was 6 when my innocence was stolen. At age 8, I was in 3rd grade. I heard the adults talking about the sudden death of my father's cousin. I was happy. God was listening. Moona was now a mother to a beautiful baby girl. I loved holding her, making her feel safe. I made silly faces that made her laugh. Listening to her laughter made me happy, distracted me from my struggles, if only for a few moments. My father used to meet up with his friends after work for a drink, a hookah, and a few games of cards. When he came home, if he wasn't too drunk, he would sit me down and empty his pockets. Coins, cards, sometimes crumpled bills scattered across the table. That was when he became my teacher. He taught me poker, blackjack, chess, backgammon, and many more games. I looked forward to those times. They were my escape, small moments that lifted me out of my painful reality. A few months later, my mother and Moona were talking about Hakeem leaving the country for good. He was going abroad to study. For the first time in a long while, the air around me felt lighter, like I could finally breathe. Hakeem had left the country. A year later, Ahmed followed. Moona was struggling, living with a man she didn't know and never loved. She tried to make a home, to be a good wife and a mother, but her eyes told a story of loneliness, a story I understood very well. At this point I felt that I could finally share the secret Hakeem had told me not to tell now that he was gone. So I told my mother. Unfortunately, it did not go well. I was blamed, yelled at, hit and met with silence. I was confused and ashamed. The guilt was real. I was told it was my fault. I decided never to speak of the abuse again. The secret went back to being a secret, one I would carry for the rest of my life. My father built us a new home in an upscale neighborhood, not too far from our old place, but far enough to feel like a new beginning. When we moved in, I was excited to be living in a new home with just the 5 of us. My father, my mother, Omar, who was 13 and in 8th grade, Saad, who was 11 and in 6th, and me, 9 years old and in 4th grade. The yard was neatly kept. Roses seemed larger and brighter, fruit trees looked happier, and the front walk felt like a promise. I told myself, maybe now I can be a child again. At school I made 3 close friends, Noor, Jamila and Layla. We walked together in the mornings and played outside after class. Our mothers became friends too. There were dinner gatherings that rotated from house to house. The smell of food and laughter filled those evenings, and for a while I felt like I belonged. We took in my elderly grandparents, my father's father and his wife. I loved them dearly. My grandmother enjoyed her hot tea with a fresh leaf of mint and loved telling stories about the village where she grew up, the harvest season and the festivals under the moonlight. Her voice was soft and steady. As she spoke, I could almost see the world she came from. She made me feel safe, wrapped in a history bigger than myself. Just when life began to feel steady, my father received a notice he was needed to head the post office in a small town a few hours away for 1 year. We found renters for our beautiful home. My grandparents moved in with my father's older brother so they'd be cared for while we were away. The 5 of us moved into a big house on the river. My father's post office was right next door, and my new school was beside it. I didn't fit in and hated everything about that town. I missed my friends, my school, our gatherings, and the yard that smelled like home. In my class, the teacher's little sister was the teacher's pet. Bossy and sure she'd be protected. One day we argued and I pushed her. She ran to her sister, who came and hit me. I escaped the school and ran to the post office crying. My father walked me back and warned the teacher never to touch me again. The next week she was let go. In that small town, my father was an important man, and people listened to him. My brothers made friends quickly, fishing, riding bikes, and playing ball at the park. I, on the other hand, felt alone. The days were long and the nights felt longer. I missed talking to my friends. They didn't have phones. Landlines were a luxury. I waited for letters that never came. I was a lonely little girl. One who should have been guided and nurtured, who should have been heard and seen, whose feelings should have mattered. Sometimes I wished someone would notice how hard I tried to be good, how quiet I became so no one would get angry. I wanted someone to ask what was wrong, to see the hurt I couldn't explain. I didn't want much. Just to feel safe, to be hugged for no reason, to know that my feelings mattered to someone, but most days I was invisible. One evening, after a bad argument with my father, my mother left town the next morning to stay with her brother. I came home from school that day to an empty house. My father was at work. My brothers were at school, and my mother was gone. I called my father at work and learned where she had gone. I wrote a note, took the little change I had, and went to the bus stop. I rode to Moona's house because I didn't know how to reach my uncle's home. Moona called my father to let him know I was safe. I stayed there for a couple of days, then my father came and took me back. News from abroad reached us in pieces. Hakeem was in America on a student visa, but had dropped out of school. He married an American woman, not out of love, but to secure his stay. They had a baby girl. From what we heard, he still lived like a single man. He called my father often, not to check on the family, but to ask for money. My father helped each time. Ahmed stayed in school. He called to check on us and never asked for money. I tried to keep up, but trauma doesn't follow calendars. My body was in the classroom, but my mind was filled with painful memories. Loneliness, sadness, depression, and anxiety were my reality. Old memories were my reality. It took a toll on me. It showed in my body. I was sick often and missed a lot of school. Even when I went, I couldn't focus. The lessons floated by me like birds I couldn't catch. The joyful little girl I once was had faded away. In her place stood a child who was always tired, always trying, always pretending to be fine. I failed 4th grade, but what I really failed was being seen. Shame grew quietly inside me, whispering that I wasn't good enough. And I believed it. Each morning I tried to smile, to act like nothing was wrong, but my eyes told a different story. I felt invisible, walking through days that all looked the same, waiting for someone to notice the sadness I couldn't name. Sometimes I would stare out the classroom window, watching the wind move the trees and wondering if life ever got easier. I wanted to be like the other kids, laughing, running, carefree. But my heart was heavy, too tired to catch up. At night I'd lie in bed and whisper to myself, maybe tomorrow will be better, even when I knew it wouldn't. The year in the small town finally came to an end. We would return home. I felt excited, quietly counting the days, marking each one like a secret promise to myself. Maybe this time things would be different. Maybe the sadness would stay behind, trapped between the river and the dusty roads that had watched me cry. I prayed to God every night, asking him to help me forget, to wash away the memories that haunted me, to make me happy again. I imagined walking back into our old neighborhood, hearing the familiar sounds of laughter, the call of the bread seller, the smell of fresh mint from my grandmother's tea. I wanted to start over, to be the child I never got the chance to be. In my heart, I still believed that going home could heal me. I didn't know yet that some things follow you even when you leave them behind.